Imagine that you work for the police or adult social care and you are assigned to this case. One day after her 18th birthday, Lizzie Gladwell was driven away from her home in what can only be described as a clandestine operation of removal. Over the following weeks, Lizzie's parents make increasingly dramatic and alarming claims, saying that Lizzie was groomed, systematically cut off, her communications monitored, others replying on her behalf, and her vulnerabilities exploited. Lizzie's parents want to meet with you to provide a deeper understanding of their experience. They also mention that others in Lizzie's support network face similar obstructions. Her parents consistently express deep concern for Lizzie's welfare, sounding insistent, desperate, and traumatised. On the other hand, there is Coral, who orchestrated and executed the removal of Lizzie, imposed the restrictions, took Lizzie's phone from her, and went on Facebook to accuse Lizzie's parents of raising a child so damaged that she felt compelled to fix her. Coral claims she has evidence. You realise this is a delicate situation because at its heart is a vulnerable young person. You wouldn't want to make a mistake. The parents repeatedly state that Lizzie has FASD, but you are unfamiliar with it. What do? Do you perhaps ask some questions? Do you enlist the help of an FASD specialist? Do you meet with Lizzie's parents to understand more about them, Lizzie's family life, routines, outlook, education, her background? Do you speak to Lizzie's family members, her aunties, uncles, cousins and grandparents to understand the bonds? Do you call or meet with godparents and church members asking, "Tell me about Lizzie and her relationships with loved ones"? Why would Lizzie need to be ripped from her family? What is the backstory here? Given that you're making a decision about the welfare of someone when there are increasingly vocal claims being made of coercive control and exploitation, you would want to be sure of your facts, wouldn't you? You'd want to do some digging, meet with people, ask questions, that kind of thing, before forming a judgment. It wouldn't need to be a full-on inquiry or inquisition, just something in response to professional curiosity. Wouldn't you? Surely. Not one question has been asked of any of Lizzie's family or support network in over a year. Not one face-to-face meeting has taken place. At all. In fact, the only person who has actually met with us is a police officer who visited our house in March 2024 but I'm getting ahead of myself. Welcome to episode 11 of When Safeguarding Fails, the Lizzie Gladwell Crisis. I'm Jeremy Gladwell, Lizzie's dad. Lizzie was being exceptionally quiet. Yes, we were blocked, as were some others, and some people hadn't been given the new number at all. However, a handful of people still had contact with her via Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp. Yet the total silence extended day by day. One of Lizzie's aunties had been trying to contact her to arrange a Christmas shopping trip. After many days without a response, Lizzie finally replied to a message. The auntie had asked how Lizzie was, and the answer was, "Not good." Concerned, the auntie tried to follow up to find the issue, but Lizzie didn't reply. By this point, Lizzie's auntie was so worried that she contacted Coral directly to ask if Lizzie was okay. Coral responded saying that Lizzie was being lazy, so all communication devices had been taken from her for 2 weeks. Lizzie's phone and computer had been confiscated for 2 whole weeks. Lizzie's godmother had also expressed worry about the silence. She presumed she had been blocked. On the return of her phone, Lizzie messaged the godmother to say, "You haven't been blocked. I got my phone taken off me for a bit because I was being mean to Coral, so she did what was best. Did what was best. Imagine you've got somebody staying with you. They're an adult, over 18. They've been staying with you for a little while, for 5 months, but they are still essentially a guest in your house. Or maybe they're a lodger. Suppose this adult gives you some cheek. Or maybe they don't do the washing up. Perhaps they can't do what you're asking of them because they've got functional difficulties. Do you punish them? Do you put them on the naughty step? Do you confiscate their phone and computer for 2 weeks? No, not if they're an adult. You can't. Do you see the issue? Coral had no legal right to take Lizzie's communication devices off her for 2 minutes, let alone 2 weeks. Lizzie was essentially a lodger, Coral the landlady. Can a landlady confiscate a lodger's devices when they do not complete their chores? Exerting punishment on an adult in your house in such a way is a key indicator of coercive control, which is illegal. Examples listed in the Home Office statutory guidance include serious effects, being deprived access to phone or internet usage, being punished or having to follow rules, living in fear of punishment of any kind, controlling behaviours, making and enforcing rules and regulations that the victim is expected to follow, and using punishments to make them comply. Restrictive behaviours, isolating the victim from family, friends, colleagues and professionals who may be trying to support them, intercepting messages or phone calls. It was as though Coral had taken the police guidance on such illegal behaviour and was using it as a guidebook. Was Coral actually playing coercive control bingo, seeing how many of the examples she could tick off? It certainly felt like it. How was our mental health? Jane by this stage had referred herself to the NHS Talking Therapies counselling service, and she was put on the waiting list. I wasn't sleeping. Worries were whirling round and round my head at night. Each day without news felt like an eternity. I felt desperate, helpless, and completely at the mercy of other people's unhurried timescales. There was no urgency or communication. I was just about keeping afloat, but it felt for all the world like the agencies were doing everything in their power to push me under. Gary Atkinson was assigned to Lizzie's case in early November 2023. By then, we had been enduring this nightmare for nearly 4 months, or 16 weeks, or 112 days. Each day without news was an ordeal, testing our patience to the limit. At the end of November, I called Gary to see if he had any updates. No, he said he was reviewing the background information, deciding on an approach and assessing the situation, which was at a critical stage. I asked him to contact me if he needed any information. I waited a week, 7 long days that felt like forever, hoping for news each day. After a week I called him again. A week? Hardly hassling. But this was my daughter. Was there any news? No, he repeated. He was still reviewing the background information, deciding on an approach, and assessing the situation, which was at a critical stage. From his tone and answer, he gave the impression that he hadn't made any progress at all. I asked if there was anything we could do to help. No, he couldn't think of anything. Surely we had lots of information and insight vital to understanding and resolving this case. No, he said, he had all he needed. I offered to signpost Gary to Lizzie's learning support assistant from Keelby Primary School, her teachers at Caister Yarborough, where she went until Year 9, her teachers at Cambridge Park Special School, and staff who know her at Linkage College, her co-leaders at Rainbows and Brownies, her grandparents who provided regular care for her, and many other people who knew her and loved her. The offer was not taken up at all. None of these people were contacted by either agency. There was no curiosity about Lizzie's connections. There was no interest in her background. Why was the extensive lived experience of Lizzie's entire support network judged to be completely irrelevant? Confused and concerned about the grey wall of indifference, I felt my balloon of hope deflate with every conversation with Gary. I expressed my rising anguish about the lack of progress, especially with Christmas approaching. Yes, Christmas is a problem, Gary agreed without enthusiasm. I'm worried about sorting out the rotas and the staff cover. It was in that moment that I realised that Gary and I were not seeing eye to eye. Where did compassion go? Empathy? Emotional intelligence? Did such qualities fit within the bureaucracy of Focus Adult Social Care at all? For me, Lizzie was a daughter, my girl, our treasure. For Gary, she was a case, but staff rotas were his bigger concern. The tepid conversation quashed any enthusiasm I might have had for the new day. The balloon was well and truly deflated. When Lizzie's computer was eventually returned to her, that day her top internet searches were abusive boyfriend, cheating mum abuses stepdaughter, and woman being strangled. Can you imagine our alarm and distress? What was going on in that house? What was Lizzie going through? What trauma was she experiencing to trigger such search terms? I sent Gary an urgent message. He called me back minutes later. Your email woke me up, he said. Had he been asleep? I told him about the confiscation of Lizzie's devices. He sounded concerned. Maybe he was beginning to realise that this was actually a serious situation. Maybe now there would be some practical action, we hoped. We never did find out what the cause of those searches were, what punishments Lizzie had endured, or what measures were put in place by Gary to resolve the issue. We were not entitled to know any of that. GDPR. The suffocating fog of silence descended once again. In my journal I wrote, "The silence and apparent inactivity is crushing us. Day by day, no word, no update, no request for information, no resolution. We had hoped that Gary would be the one who would bring about the necessary liberation. We still hold that hope, but it is so difficult to cling to mist. The silence gnaws away at any optimism we might accrue through faith or self-care. There is little joy in life at the moment because it is all about waiting, waiting, waiting. There have been moments of significant movement when we have submitted evidence to the police or social services, convinced that there is clear grounds for decisive action. But alas, no. They awaken momentarily, show a flicker of interest, and then settle down and resume their slumber. Here's a curious thing. In the fortnight when Lizzie's phone had been confiscated, Jane had sent 2 messages and tried to ring Lizzie's phone. When Lizzie's phone was returned to her, Lizzie sent Jane a text message asking why Jane had not been in touch at all. Lizzie's message said, "I'm still messaging you even though you never messaged me once for 2 weeks to see if I was okay. My aunties and Amy did though." Jane said that she had messaged twice and rung once. Lizzie said, "You haven't messaged, otherwise I would have got the messages." Jane sent a screenshot of the messages she had sent to reassure Lizzie that she had been in touch. Lizzie replied, "I didn't get them." Text messages don't just disappear, not nowadays. Missed calls are shown as well when a phone is switched back on. In light of everything that had been going on, what do you imagine had happened? Coral had taken Lizzie's phone. By the time Lizzie got her phone back, there was no record of any contact from Jane at all. Why do you suppose that was? And as a consequence of the messages from Jane being mysteriously cleansed, Lizzie was of the view that this showed that her mum didn't care. Where had that suggestion originated from? This information has been given to both Focus Adult Social Care and Humberside Police. No response. Here's another curious thing. Lizzie was not the only young woman with special needs to be taken from our village to Grimsby in July 2023 and kept under matriarchal coercive control. We learned about a second case in December 2023. The young woman involved was actually a friend of Lizzie's from primary school, who, like Lizzie, had just turned 18 when she was taken. Her parents had contacted both Focus Adult Social Care and Humberside Police, facing the same concrete wall that we experienced. It seemed like a striking coincidence. 2 young women from the same village, both with special needs. What were the chances? We were even more alarmed when we found out about the third case. Young female from our village taken to Grimsby, matriarchal coercive control. This information has been given to both Focus Adult Social Care and Humberside Police. No response. December 10th, 2023. Lizzie texted Jane asking if I could send her a message because Lizzie didn't have my number at all. I managed to send Lizzie a single text, the first for almost 2 months, before I was blocked again. Lizzie texted Jane saying, "How do I unblock? I've blocked him by mistake." I was unblocked again. I exchanged 3 or 4 light-hearted messages with Lizzie, and then I was blocked once more. 4 days later, it appeared I was once again unblocked. I sent Lizzie a text. "Hi, you there? Kiss, kiss, kiss." Lizzie replied, "Yeah, is this Daddy? Kiss, kiss, kiss." Why on earth would Lizzie need to ask if it was Daddy on a smartphone? Why was her own dad's number not stored in her phone? Why were there no previous messages available to help her identify who had texted her? I asked why I kept on being blocked. Lizzie replied to say that she did it by accident because she was anxious. Why would getting in touch with her parents make her feel so anxious? We knew she had no fear of us, so exactly what was she so afraid of? In mid-December, I sent Gary of Focus Adult Social Care an email of update of how I was being blocked, unblocked, blocked on Lizzie's phone, despite Lizzie's overt expression of wanting to contact me. I wrote, "Christmas is rapidly approaching, and we are not allowed to see our daughter. I recognise that you have guidelines to follow, and I am grateful for your support. My hope is that you can empathise with the anguish we experience daily, especially at this time of year. Are we expected to get through Christmas without any word from her? Is Lizzie expected to spend Christmas without seeing her own parents? I reiterate my offer to meet, introduce myself, and provide more information about Lizzie, her diagnosis, her background and family. This context is vital to communicate how extraordinary this family devastation is, inflicted upon Lizzie and us by Coral Wilson Clark. We have still not met. What mystified me most, and still does, is how neither agency indicated to Coral, "Look, Mrs. Wilson Clark, what you are doing is ill-advised, cold, heartless and illegal. You need to stop. You need to allow Lizzie to see her parents and family. You need to stop interfering with her communications and obstructing messages. If you do not stop, we have the power to intervene." Instead, it seemed that both agencies were doing everything possible to encourage and defend Coral. At this stage, we had no idea the level of support Coral would receive from the statutory agencies to perpetuate her control of Lizzie, but we soon would. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of When Safeguarding Fails, the Lizzie Gladwell Crisis. If you found it moving or helpful, or if you think our story could help others, then please like, share, or simply tell others about it. Thank you again, and join me for the next episode.